Hello guys, welcome again to Hollywood Recapped. Today I will recap you a 2006's movie named Marie Antoinette. Spoiler alert and take care. As Marie wakes up for the day, she gets dressed and is escorted to her parents. Marie is all set to become the Queen of France and she heads out accompanied by her ambassador on her journey. She looks at a picture of her groom-to-be and she finds ways to entertain herself on her long journey to France from Austria. Soon they arrive at the place where the ambassador will hand off Marie to the French court. She's introduced to Comtesse Noël, the Comtesse curtsies as is tradition. But Marie embraces her with a big smile on her face. She explains that now she's leaving Austria behind and she'll enter onto the French soil as the Dauphine of France. The French even take her dog away, they remove all of her clothes and personal belongings so they can dress her up in French clothes only. Now that Marie has said goodbye to all of her homeland belongings, she now hops in another carriage and takes the journey to the French countryside. More of the court gathers here. Marie is welcomed by the King of France. The king introduces Marie to his grandson Louis and she finally gets to see her fiancé in person. Marie now hops into yet another carriage and heads for the palace. Once more there, Marie is welcomed by a plethora of royals that are awaiting her arrival. She accepts flowers from the children and feels the stares of everyone as she walks inside. Once there, women in her entourage are just as judgy as the ones outside. One thing I must tell you all, that the palace shots are actually inside the Palace of Versailles itself. After getting settled in, Marie makes her way to the church where her husband-to-be is waiting for her, along with half royals of France. Now her husband-to-be puts ring on her finger. And, at the reception, things don't seem to loosen up at all when the king makes things even more blatantly awkward by toasting the newlywed couple, producing an heir to the throne. The newlywed couple get ready to go to bed and they're tucked in by about 30 royals and the bishop. The king even wishes them good luck before the curtains are drawn. And not to put any pressure on anyone. By morning, the king finds out that nothing has really happened and the dressing cord wakes up Marie. Marie gets a quick introduction to procedure in France and she learns by having to stand naked in front of everyone as the person with the highest rank gets the privilege to dress her. And then it's time for breakfast and even more procedures are to be followed, and Marie realizes that things are much different for a royal in France when compared to Austria. At bed, she tries to make conversation with Louis to try and find out more about him, but he doesn't give her a single bit of wiggle room. The same night, Marie attends dinner and she finds out that the king has a mistress that he brings so she can pleasure him. No one seems to be keen on her being there, but Marie is interested in the fact that she doesn't hold to their social standards. She burps at the table and everyone looks like they're about to throw up. As a result, rumors fly as Marie is still looked at as an outsider. And that night at bed, Louis tells her that he's too tired to do anything. The next day, Marie even gets a letter from her mother that tells her to get Louis to consummate the marriage. The news of their lack of sex has officially crossed country lines. After being reminded that the treaty that has been put into effect, she tries to lay on a little extra charm that night, but it still has no effect on Louis. By the next day, Marie's had enough of being brushed off and treated like a foreigner. Then Marie spots the mistress of the king and she seems to get an idea to not do so much as to touch her. It's not even that Louis doesn't like women. He almost seems like he has no idea how to talk to anyone. Word gets around that Marie has been snubbing the king's mistress and this brings worry to her mother and the ambassador. Marie doesn't see why she should associate herself with a harlot. But she eventually gives in and plays along just enough to make the king happy. At night, while the king and his mistress play pin the tail feather, Marie listens to Louis talk about the first mechanical locks, completely clothed. As time goes on, Marie gets used to the politics of royalty. When Louis leaves to go on a hunting trip, then Marie is very open about how humiliated she would be if her sister-in-law would become pregnant before her. So, Louis promises her that they'll finally try for an heir after he returns back. Later at the opera, Marie changes the tradition by clapping at a court performance, which is usually frowned upon after seeing the reception of the crowd. Louis seems to start to see her in a new light while he's out on another hunting venture. Marie gets a letter from her mother that puts even more strain on her need to produce an heir. That night, Louis actually kisses her and tries to do what he thinks will work. He grabs her hair like he's holding a rag doll and he mounts her. Louis and Marie are called into the delivery of Louis's nephew and Marie can hear everyone criticizing her for not producing an heir and she walks back to her room to cry. Afterwards, Marie seems to go on a shopping spree and she's eventually talked into going to a masked ball that they would normally not be allowed to enter. Since it's a masked ball, they assume that they'll be able to slip in without anyone knowing. While they mingle, Louis ends up meeting someone that shows interest in knowing whether Marie has been deflowered. Louis ends up leaving him there. After hearing that he did like to do the deeds if Louis hasn't been able to yet. Meanwhile, Marie catches the eye of another man, Count Person of the Swedish army. Marie plays hard to get and she ends up meeting back with Louis in time to head back to the palace. Now after hearing that of other guy when they return to the palace, they find out that the king is ill with smallpox and he can't make his final confession while having a mistress. After sending the mistress away, the king dies and Louis is crowned the next king of France. And now that Marie is queen, she enjoys all of the spoils that come with it. A part is thrown for Marie's 18th birthday. Towards the end of the party Louis heads to bed and he leaves Marie to finish her birthday with a few friends as they wait to watch the sunrise in a few hours. After watching the most beautiful sunrise, Louis heads out for a hunt and Marie heads back inside. Later Marie finds out that she has run out of money for the month. Whereas, Louis sends funds and troops to America to they start their revolution. Soon Marie's brother shows up and he tries to talk to Marie about her constant gambling and partying. He even has a little sex talk with Louis and finds out that everything works just not at the right time. So, he writes back to their mother to assure her that things should be back on track. And that night Louis actually does the intimate deeds and Marie looks like a new woman the next morning. Then time passes by and we see Marie giving birth and we find out that it's a girl. Later Louis treats Marie to a new retreat and she spends a good amount of time relaxing there. Then we see time jumps again. And we see that Marie hears about how her new evasion of protocol has upset some of the royals back at the palace. But she decides to stick with her own plans. When the soldiers that fought in America come back, Louis throws a ball in their honor. And Marie comes back to the palace to welcome them home. While having introductions Marie runs into Count Fersen again. After a festive evening people started to take notice of how Marie liked to be entertained by Count Fersen. And this quickly turns into the two of them having an affair at Marie's retreat. After Count leaves, Marie's life seems to go back to the same dull routine as she walks the steps of the palace. While Marie walks around the members of the royal court are gossiping. She has a daydream of Count Fersen to top his horse during battle and she asks to be excused. Then she leaves and heads back to her room where she lies in bed and continues to think about Fersen. Later Louis starts to make life hard for the French people by continuing to aid the Americans even though France is in huge debt with the people suffering from hunger. They turn to make fun of Marie and her entourage as a way out. Marie tries to speak with the ambassador to figure out a way to help the people. But she hears about the death of her mother. Marie writes back to her brother to make sure that he knows that France is still an ally and she's still his sister. Now, we jump ahead to Marie giving birth to a male heir and time jumps ahead even more. Here we see that Marie's spending is labeled as the reason that France is in debt and the people are not happy with their standards of living. During this tough time, Marie tries to make some changes that will keep the palace spending down, but she still enjoys the luxuries of being the Queen of France. Eventually France starts to put all of its traditions back into play. And they try to make Marie feel like an outcast in the country she rules. As time moves on, we see that Marie has yet another baby, but it dies as an infant. Marie sulks around the palace as she mourns the passing of her baby and she takes solace for holding the children that she has left. Life goes on, but they're interrupted yet again when they find out that the Versailles has been stormed by an angry mob. The court recommends that all royals associated with the family should be sent off to safe place elsewhere. But Marie tells them that she'll stay with Louis. At the palace after Marie says goodbye to all of her friends, she's left in an empty palace. As they ride off to safety in other countries and fortresses. Soon Louis is warned of an angry mob that's on its way to the palace. Sure enough they arrive that night and a guard comes in to warn the group that they're coming in to kill Marie. They quickly get the children and gather together in another room. As they wait for the mob to come inside. Marie opens the balcony door to look out at them. And eventually Louis and Marie head to their dinner table where they wait for the mob to come in. Then we see that Marie and the children are being escorted to a carriage in the morning. She looks out over the grounds one last time and she smiles at Louis. As she realizes that she'll never see this side again. The movie ends here. I hope you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below which movie should I recap next.